Urban, welcome to the Pantrium Podcast.
Thank you so much, Christie. Glad to be here.
Me too. And we spoke quite a while ago, actually, because I reached out to you back in the day because I wanted to hear a little bit more about all the cool stuff you're doing at IBM with your startups and the studio, your program there. And I was super curious to understand a bit more. So that's how we got to know each other. And Well, recently I've noticed your really cool, interesting videos about AI and what that all means and the pitfalls that you see from your experience with the ecosystem that people are perhaps, should learn from. Hence why we're sitting here today. We're going to talk about exactly that. But before we dive in and get nitty-gritty in that, I wanted to hear a little bit more about who are you as a person. And as you know, I open up each show with the question of what's your fun fact? So Urban, it's no different for you. So what's your fun fact?
Yes, I of course gave it a lot of thought, but I thought I'd really share something fun and informal. So I'm a little bit knack for trying to learn difficult things, no matter back when I was a kid, I really practiced to do this.
Do that again, please.
With eyebrows.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God.
And both of
No,
course.
I can't do it.
But so it's yes. And then later on in university, I really practiced to spin my pen just because it was hard and it was very satisfactory to master something that was difficult, even though it's quirky and pretty useless, right? And today I do the same, trying to master a lot of things within training and CrossFit, which is really wide reach. So really being pretty crap at it for being a full-blown male at my weight class, but nevertheless, it's so fun to do everything from gymnastics to Olympic weightlifting and stuff.
That is so cool. But that's a cool party trick. Like when you see people also in meetings sitting and spinning their pen, you're just like, you get a bit mesmerized by it.
So that's me. I'm kind of curious, spend a lot of time focusing on stuff, trying to dig in just for the curiosity or because it's hard.
Yeah, I love that. And the curiosity is definitely also something that I see again and again on this podcast with guests. And speaking of learning and speaking of curiosity, one of the things I wanted to ask you just before we dive further into our discussion today, I wanted to hear what's the latest book or podcast or talk that really hit you, something that really changed or challenged the way that you think about your space.
Yes, so I thought about that as well. And I must say it was the second last book I really read here because it really shook my core. It's a book called Reshuffle. It just came out this summer. It's about who wins in the knowledge economy when AI sort of restacks the game. And I guess at the heart of it, it talks about that we're focusing too much on, can this be automated or augmented? Instead of focusing around what's the actual work that needs to happen end to end, focusing more around the coordination of that work. So how do we actually coordinate either inside our organizations or outside within an economical ecosystem that work, which ends up who will have a benefit and who will have increased power and who will have decreased power. As an really overlooked type of focus, we focus so much on, can this be automated, this single task? And he draws a very compelling case from history, near history, 20th century, really low-tech solutions as the barcode, as container shipping to really draw his point. So I encourage everyone who is remotely interested in what happens next to read that book and really, I think, get a little bit shattered in their views on what comes next.
Yeah. It reminds me of something we spoke about in our prep call leading into this podcast about where do you position AI in your organization and how do you bring those projects into the organization, and also how do you drive value from it? And to your point in terms of with this idea of the knowledge economy and where does that leave us? It's beyond automation and so forth. Do you see that in the skill set and the workforce, there's a difference between being a generalist and a specialist?
Is there a difference? Yes, of course there is. although I think the playing fields are leveled. So if you talk about from an economical point of view, which you also talk about in the book, the premium you will have as a specialist will get blurred and washed out somewhat due to the scarcity of your special area. Somebody else who's a generalist together with AI could probably do something similar. If you have enough domain or context knowledge, you can probably produce something that's good enough in many cases. Not all, but many cases. And just that removing of that scarcity will change again, restack the table. And in some people's favor, in others less so.
Yeah. And that's really interesting. And I wanted to move us on to the next question I have lined up for you, because in our conversation last time, we also talked about this concept of tech first versus impact. And we talked about culture and the value of AI and also all the pitfalls as your recent videos on LinkedIn specifically. And I'm keen to hear from you. What's a conversation you think that businesses and leaders right now don't have enough of, or just entirely avoiding when it comes to digital transformation and innovation as we're sitting in it right now?
Yeah. So I think there's one key thing that both has to do with technology, with process, but first and foremost with us as humans and our coworkers and employees, right? So I think that if I rationalize or simplify, I think there's a general trend that people feel that now, okay, we got some assistants available, AI assistants, co-pilots, whatnots available. People seem to be fairly happy with that. They get some productivity gains. They learn, okay, great. Now let's move on and get some renewed structure and try to renew our processes. And then and you can, of course, and you can go about doing that. But I think you're missing out on some key points here. You're failing to comprehend what's at stake for the employees, because they have garnered some new insights about their roles that they've been, to a large extent, left with to talk to themselves and their peers about, but maybe not you as a leader. And you also fail to comprehend what this can mean for your organization at large and for you as a business. So I think there's a lot more at stake here than, as I said in the other that he speaks about in the book, but we also saw that earlier on, that they're just finding a few more automation candidates on stuff that we could potentially automate or augment our workforce. So there's a lot more to look at and manage, basically.
Why do you think that we are so obsessed almost with just productivity gains? You hear, oh, we need an AI strategy, oh, we need to put AI on it, that it becomes almost this magical wand that swoops and then suddenly stuff has happened. Is it because people are misunderstanding what AI is, or what do you think is the reason behind that?
From one perspective, it's no different than any other major industrial change. There's a new playbook that's been written as we speak. And if you're going to apply the previous playbook's rules and processes to it and just patch on new technology onto it, you will get some gains. But likely you will be either out of business or pushed down in the hierarchy. So you need to rethink it. What is changing, though, is that previously this was about either production, supply chain, something else. Now it actually affects knowledge work, which is to a large extent something that we haven't really comprehended can be affected in this way. And it is a change in how knowledge work is being done. I think that's what's beyond the hype and beyond PhD level expectations of capabilities. You can do some really pretty advanced stuff and get good enough precision in it that you can scale it. This is new. This hasn't been done before. And there's also some other traits that you can benefit on when it comes to this area. how you coordinate and lead work. There's some pretty major changes already done with AI that we often overlook, but just because maybe it hasn't hit us yet. And with us, I refer also to myself and my peers here who are dominantly knowledge workers in some shape or form. But now it's actually affecting us.
Yeah. I find it super interesting also this concept of a new playbook, and you need to look at that, right? And I'm wondering, from your perspective and all the work and what you are exposed to also at IBM, do you see what does this new playbook entail?
So I think nobody has the answer right now. If they do, don't listen too much to them. We know that stuff is changing. We have all the methods, we have all the ways to explore how this could make sense for organizational or for business ecosystems or for industries. But do we have the exact playbook yet? No, we don't. And I would encourage all to bring caution to those who say that they have all the answers. We have knowledge, experience, and proven methods on how to go about finding those answers, specifically for a particular organization or an industry. But we do know that, as I said, a lot of the scarcity constraints, because most organizations work out of constraints, right? You try to optimize towards something. And in many cases, in industry, it can be you're optimizing based on uptime for your machinery because they are very expensive. So you want to maximize the use of them. And you optimize the whole organization around that. For knowledge work, we optimize for getting our people working as good as possible. And now that scarcity of different type of specialities that you mentioned before is going down. There are going to be new constraints that will come in and old ones will be removed. And which exactly those constraints are and how they're going to change, we don't know. That's per business process and per industry. But we know they're going to change, and we know the type that's likely is going to change. And that's what you need to look at this with fresh eyes to create that new playbook for your organization and how you're going to compete. Yeah. Otherwise, somebody else will, and they're already doing it. Maybe either lower your profits or bring you out of business.
Yeah. And I think also that's why I'm so keen on bringing these stories and voice the experiences and observations of the market, right? Because to your point, like everything is up in the air. You need to reevaluate. You need to think about how do you organize yourself and your team and your organization to thrive in this new world where AI is dominating, for better or worse. Going back to your earlier conversation around knowledge work, I almost get this flashback on when the robots entered the factories and the blue collar workers and those who were working in factories were doing this duplicated work that robots now could go in and replace. I feel like there's a lot of synergies in that, but I wanted to hear from you with everything that's going on and with what we just talked about. Why does this matter so much to you, and why do you get so excited about everything AI?
I've thought a lot about this sort of, and I guess that why I'm passionate about this, because I feel that Nordic organizations in general have a very open, inclusive, and learning culture. I don't take that for granted. And we also know that there's going to be tides and ebbs, and some will survive and some will thrive and others won't. I'm just very eager and passionate about securing that this type of approach will come out winning. And then our maybe slightly more consensus or inclusive and reflective type of organizations and learning that's not just pointing with one hand towards one direction will prevail and will come out stronger. But then we need to act, and we can't be overly cautious. We need to balance what we know and what we don't know. And we need leaders who are strong enough to say that we're going in this direction and bring people on board, but also being vulnerable and honest enough to say that we don't have all the answers, but to make sure that the whole organization and everybody feels that they're on the same journey. and the leadership are not contriving it about automating away a number of people along the way, because then productivity will go down anyway, because people will just wonder what happens next. And we can't afford that, because otherwise we might end up with a winning formula of very authoritative organizations, which I don't think many people want to work for or work in or lead. And also, of course, I want to make sure that those type of organizations are there for my kids to start working, or maybe join, or maybe found. So that's why I'm really passionate about it.
It feels like there's so much weight on the shoulders of leaders and founders out there to navigate all this and figuring it out in real time while we're moving it. Like technology, and especially AI, gets faster and faster and faster, and everything, new startups and new tools and new functionalities and threats and so forth is popping up every single day. With all of that, what would you say is the biggest thing that a leader or founder, for that matter, probably in the Nordics, should focus on? What do you see is their biggest strength and an area that they shouldn't undermine?
Well, I think at the heart of it, in order to serve your clients, you need to have passionate coworkers. In order to have passionate coworkers, you need to have a purpose, and you need to know where to play and how to win. And in order to do that, if you're a larger organization, or to run faster or gain more, attract more capital or investors and eventually clients and everything, if you're a founder, I think you need to try to be clear about what you're about and hold on to that as new tech storms are raging right around you. Because if you lose track of that whilst you automate and change the way you work, some values and some stuff needs to hold true over the course of time for people to relate to you and feel passionate about you. That's why so many love Patagonia or other purpose-driven, not just because they have great clothes and everything, but really it's something more. Economically, you can charge a premium for that, even if you're not. I think that's the difficult answer is to give anything is to, while you're changing, if you're a larger organization, or while you're running even faster or gaining more, to try to stay clear about what you're about. Try to define that in a meaningful way, not something that will show up just in an annual report or values to put on the wall, but something that's actually people can recognize themselves in every day. And that's how you build culture, and that's how you build passionate both coworkers and eventually clients who really love to work with you. I think that's important in all the midst of everything else.
Yeah, being purpose-led, right? And have a bigger meaning or position, or also opinions, and something you stand for that people can recognize. Because what happens when tech is on equal footing? Because we can all create or should have access to the same tools. Sometimes we tend to forget the basics. And perhaps in this concept of identifying that new playbook and identify your new positioning or play in this environment, the basics are just becoming even more important.
Yes, because when you start to look at how you're going to reshape your processes, if you take an example, just a very basic example of a hotel, right?
Yeah.
You can have a concierge who will meet you, a portier who meet and greets you and lead your way. Or you can have a check-in kiosk that you do digitally. There's no right or wrong. It's about what type of experience do you want to have, and how does that align with your brand and the brand expectations. And the same goes for everything when it comes to the type of decisions. So decision making along the way, what should you automate, or what should you prioritize improving, and what's less important. That becomes very difficult decisions to make if you're just taking them case by case. But if you have a core which you can relate to, then it becomes less difficult.
One thing that popped to my mind is also the concept of Klarna completely, well, at least they removed a huge part of their customer support teams to then recruit most of them back again not too long after that. Because again, to your point, what experience is it that you're trying to deliver for your customers? And sometimes just because you can automate or outsource or completely skip a level doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing for you to do so.
No, exactly. Maybe you should spend a lot more to maximize your employees' time being client-facing or user-facing and make their life a whole lot easier, orchestrating and organizing everything at their fingertips.
Yeah.
So there's no right or wrong, but there's been a whole lot of technology-first type of approaches, either vendors or just fear of missing out has led people to implement solutions very copy-paste like even across, and then realizing that maybe there's not that much gains to be made. Maybe there's a little bit productivity or a little bit cost reduction, but at the cost of something much greater.
I wanted to just double click a little bit more on your own experience sitting there in the ecosystem where you feel like it's worth reflecting on and learn from.
I think one basic thing that struck me myself is, and I encourage just using assistants and for yourself, for your own. That's actually something we encourage with all leaders or leadership teams that we have here in our innovation studio. If they haven't already, they need to use it themselves in order to open their eyes and understand what's at stake. Because otherwise you can say it how much you want to, but unless it hits you yourself. And when it hit me was really when we were preparing in our team a way to engage and let organizations reflect on their current use in order to plan for the future. And we were drawing a lot on others' research and, of course, using AI assistants for that, and also agent to process AI agents for that. And we were 3 people here in our team. We generated white papers and stuff as we go and then iterated on those. I'm a person who always have sort of pride myself to read, analyze, reflect, and sort of write stuff. As an former academic and as an engineer, and sort of it's something that lies close to heart.
Yeah.
And I was reading this, then generated white papers around different type of threads on how you can do this. Very comprehensive, like 15 pages at a time at a really fast pace, with the goal of then reflecting and trying to get my own arms around it until our next gathering and talks around how we should take this forward. And I just realized that I'm not coping. My ability to read, comprehend, and analyze is the same. But the ability for others who are using this to create new content and new insights is increasing a lot. So I got to a point where I needed to, in order for us to collaborate, if one of us has a tight collaboration with AI, all of us need to, because otherwise we can't collaborate. So and the jury I'm not still convinced on how to do this the best way, but I realized that I might be needing to not just get help analyzing stuff, but also synthesizing stuff into and not doing that myself. And that sort of felt really like standing on an edge looking down, or at the barrel of a gun shooting at my identity as a knowledge worker used to doing this in a certain way. So I think that's when it hits me. If it hits me this hard, then it's got to hit a whole lot others who are starting to use this in their daily work. And then I got some new glasses on and looked around and read a lot of reports about union reports saying that coworkers are not revealing how much they actually get help because they don't want to get 30% more on their desk. And leaders are maybe not either sharing what they use or don't. And also, I saw the shift in power in terms of some teams internally that has in our organization that has sort of held insights and data that's now available through internal assistants. So maybe we don't need them to collaborate with them in order to do our work, the same thing. So again, stuff is restacked and a lot of cards is up in the air and you don't see anything of that. The only analysis on eventually when it started to come out that the results are not there for organizations, the reports came in. We had our IBM C-suite study. There was other reports coming, and then eventually the MIT saying 95% of all pilots and AI sort of is not delivering the results. But then they all focus around, well, we need to measure better and we need to calculate the value better and we need to do, yes, you need to do all those stuff as well. But maybe that's not enough as well, because you need to take into the account the human aspect. This is not the new application that you're just going to use. It's actually a bigger, much bigger change for our as human and our co-workers' identity and how you're going to do work. And either you talk about it or your organization is going to talk to each other or talk to somebody else or just feel generally insecure about where stuff is leading. So that's when I felt that we really need to have a way to talk about that in a way that more people, so it's not just delegated to IT.
Yeah.
Because then you have, in IT, you have a lot of, we love abbreviations. So you have a lot of different type of abbreviations for different type of things. And a lot of people in the organization that should be at the table to discuss the way forward are not there.
There is so much to unpack there. To your point, they're afraid that they will then just be told to do more work because suddenly, oh, if you're faster, then do more.
Yeah. So no, I think it all comes down to one thing. And if it's one thing I've learned as a aspiring leader for a number of years is that you need trust. And it goes both ways. And it sounds blatantly simple and oversimplified, but it's actually true. I see it over and over again. When you don't have trust, you get a lot of questions, you get a lot of things in the way, and you spend a lot of time figuring out different type of way, which are really just symptoms of lack of trust. And when you have trust, you can overcome hills and mountains together because you trust one another. And I think if you don't have trust, you need to really work on it because all organizations are in for a ride, either later or rather sooner, depending on your appetite and where you want to play in the new economy here. But you need to establish it because you're going to take your organization for a ride, and you need to have the trust in there to make sure that you both end up where you want to and that people are still sort of keeping their tools in the hands while you're at it and not laying down their tools in the midst of saying that we don't believe in this anymore or we're not that eager to get where you're pointing. So I think that's never before has it been that crucial to establish trust and really have honest dialogues internally.
Yeah. The soft skills become super important. How do you then build this trust and get people to work together and share lessons, embrace AI?
No, but actually I was participating in, it's something that you need to remind yourself and remind our collaborators, our partners and clients over and over again to have that human-centered approach. Because we easily, when we interact with other leaders and plan out projects that we're going to do, it's pretty easy to just say, okay, we're here for you and we're going to do it for you. And then we're going to do it to the other in the organization.
Yeah.
And just this week, we were in a kickoff for a new AI project together with a counterpart where this came up again, where we're going to do something to test and start out. And I really stressed that in the meeting that we need to have the users on board from day one, even though it's not specifically intended. The initial value is partly for them, but mostly for leaders within the organization. But saying that this is just step one, you're in for many steps. And you need to have your most important assets with you on that journey. I think the positive thing is that when you just say that, this organization, just like most others, are, yes, of course, we need to do it. But you need to remind it, and we need to constantly say it, because otherwise it's so easy to just slip out.
It's the table stakes again. I love this because, I was just also at an event the other day, and I was like, how many of you have actually spoken to your customers, right? Room out of 50? 5. It's just, it's so easy, but we forget it. And I think you're so right, Urban. Like, we have to remind ourselves of it, because sometimes it's the easiest part that we forget, because it's easy, but therefore also very hard. And like, why wouldn't you bring your user of some of a project into any dialogues? And I think that's also why we're seeing AI projects failing, but also just in general, products are failing in their launch, because they're being built with a handful of folks that have forgotten about, why are we actually doing this in the first place, for what purpose?
Yeah, I think it's both direct users, because they need to validate what they are, but there's also that change management aspect, the transformation aspects, and the trust piece that eventually we will likely automate a few of these tasks people are going to do, even though we focus on the whole system or the whole process here. Likely there will be very, very compelling cases where we can automate certain of these tasks. But we will need people as well. The honest answer is we don't know if we're going to need everybody, and we don't know exactly what they need to do. That's the honest answer. But likely we will need most to do even more, because this is a growing pie. It's not a zero-sum game. So if you're a growing company that's growing at double-digit growth, you're likely going to need more people in your organization. Are they going to do exactly the same thing that they did yesterday for old Playbook, for the previous Playbook? No, not likely. You're going to renew stuff. But it's very easy to say that, yeah, but we don't have all the answers, so we can't involve them now because we'll just spook them. So it's better that we develop something here now, and eventually maybe we can automate a few of these, and some of these roles will likely be removed or get lost here in the transformation. So it's best not to stir the pot here. But in reality, it should really be the opposite in general, because you need their insights, you need their expertise in order to reshape the new way of working. And the only way to do that and to get their participation is if you have trust.
I really love this, because they're the one that knows that process inside out. They would be the ones that would understand what would the new playbook look like, instead of like shutting them out.
Yeah. You need to be confident and comfortable, and also have trust in your organization in order to do that. So I understand why people hesitate, and it's not for everybody. But I do believe that those that do will come out on top in the end, with strengthened brand and improved business.
I wanted to move us on with a focus ahead, as we are looking at what's to come and everything we just talked about, which is not a small defeat. Who do you see out there, peer leaders that are, and I want to not say that it's a conclusion of getting it right, but perhaps they're moving in the right direction, they're thinking in the right way, that others could learn from?
Yeah, so I think I looked around a lot and also read about a lot around this area. And of course, I'm old enough to be part of the last AI wave that came a little over 10 years ago, where it was a lot of promise. I think we're in a much better situation now to deliver on that promise. But the ones that really capitalized and delivered on a lot of that promise was the startup industry and new founders. And part being that maybe I can't argue that they're better with managing people or change as such, but just because they're not carrying around the weight of expectations or large organizations or an existing business that they need to reshape and cannibalize on already, and that they have a very clear purpose around what they're doing. So I think with those caveats, I think those that are really capitalizing on and pursuing is within the startup industry. To really, a lot of the use cases large organizations are looking at scenarios, looking at improving, they're pursuing just one. and doing a really great job at it. So I think if you're looking for inspiration for how to reshape industries or domains or areas, just look around and you will find a handful of startup companies who are pursuing just that. Most of them will likely not reach the full length or realizing it everything, but they're still getting more right than most of other organizations are doing. At least they are pursuing it. So that would be my recommendation, to look around for inspiration and paths forward.
And as we were talking about truths, what is one uncomfortable truth more people need to face?
Well, again, I think I was for a long time, I embarrassed my daughter at a school visit when she was looking at where to go. It was a legal school, and I asked about what they did with AI and everything, and they gave some wishy-washy answer. Then said that I'm convinced that lawyers with AI is going to take the jobs from those without. And it
Yeah.
was a very dead silence, and I got a hard evil's eye from my daughter,
She's like,
who
don't ruin my application.
yeah, felt very, very embarrassed, and I apologized for that. But I kept that for quite a long time, until recently, when I understood it's really a fallacy. It's a great comfort to tell yourself that if I just learn this new tool, I'll be safe. But we can just go to history and look at what came about the typewriters. So we used to have typewriters who wrote out letters, formal letters, and everything else. And it wasn't the typewriters with eventually with the laptop and Word on it that took the job from the other typewriters without it. It was just that job fell onto everybody as the cost of mistakes came down to zero, as we could edit and everything. So that whole job fell out. And not to scare people too much, but likely this will happen to a lot of existing knowledge work as well. So just learning a new tool that I see a lot of recommendation on, I don't think it's a good start. Just to be curious about what's next, what comes next within my field of work. But it's not the antidote for being sort of pushed down in the hierarchy of work. So rather looking for how will work within my domain, how could it look like going forward? And what is my interest and strong suits, and where could I play within that work? And in order to do that, of course, you need to start looking at some of the new tools and some of the way of workings, and whole industries or areas is really changing at really rapid pace.
And
So I think that's a fallacy. Maybe it's not the most uplifting one, but still it's something to maybe stop using as a phrase.
And I think you're so right. There's more to it than that. Urban, before we wrap up, in this moment of uncertainty and rule books being rewritten and everything else, what would you advise someone to double down on and pay attention to these days?
Well, with the risk of sounding repetitive, I think what I would encourage them to start listening and asking questions already now, what their organizations are doing, how they're using it today, and in a safe space, and what it means to them and the way they work today. And for some, it's just like, yeah, it's some admin. Maybe I'm doing a presentation a little bit quicker or everything. But I think you'd be amazed at the changes that's happening for how you actually do the job. As a starting point for a broader work around where should we rearrange some of the work that we're doing, and how could this actually open up if we scale this across more the way we're working? How would it affect on where we could play and how we could win better going forward? So I think that's what we're trying to do here at Studio as well, to encourage and structure those type of reflection exercises.
If you were to pinpoint one thing from our conversation that you think the listeners should apply tomorrow, what should that be? Easy question.
I think gather your leadership team, pull back the mandate for IT to do this and pull everybody in, including HR, and find a way or find somebody to help you find a way to have that conversation together on where you want to go next. Because it's not something that you can delegate. And maybe it's not so much an AI strategy you need. It's more about when we collectively can bring together an understanding on what new opportunities it unlocks, to have a conversation on where we want to play and how can we win better. And therefore, how could we potentially start looking at some new ways on how we operate as an organization in some areas. And then there's a whole general playbook in terms of building out methods and stuff on how to do that. But I think in general, that's pretty known. So it's more like pulling it off the counter and putting it to use. Shake around that status quo and get everybody on board within the leadership and the organization.
Get everyone on board, trust, bring people together and make the most out of AI and not have hidden conversations or project side gigs and so on. Bring people together. I absolutely have enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for joining the Pantrium Podcast show.
Thank you, Christie. It was my pleasure, really. Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have feedback, topic ideas, or guest recommendations, we are all ears. Pantrium is growing thanks to our community of listeners. So if something resonated with you, we would love for you to share your favorite takeaways. And just a quick note. The views shared by our guests are entirely their own and don't necessarily reflect the companies they work for. That's it for now. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time.